Welcome to Go for CDL Truck Driving School. You've made the right choice by joining us, and we're excited to have you on board as you take your first step towards a very rewarding career in trucking.
Before you take your CDL exam, it's important to understand how the air brake system works on a semi-truck and trailer. The air brake test is a key part of the DMV exam, and students are more likely to fail it if they don't fully understand how the system and its parts work together. We'll explain the basics of the air brake system in easy-to-understand terms. Once you start driving trucks and trailers, you'll learn more and get the hang of it. This is just to give you a solid starting point in your preparation for the CDL exam and successful entry into the trucking industry. Let's start. Truck brakes. How do they work? Let's start from the beginning and take a look at the motion of a typical 3-axle Volvo semi-truck. All 3 axles are equipped with brakes that respond simultaneously when the driver presses the brake pedal, as the power of compressed air is converted into mechanical force to apply them. Using compressed air as a power source for braking is both cost-effective and easier to maintain. Moreover, air is free, eliminating the need for the more expensive brake fluid used in regular cars. The front steering axle simply rolls and provides directional control based on how the driver turns the steering wheel. Meanwhile, the 2 rear drive axles push the truck forward or backward by receiving the engine's power through a drive shaft. When the driver presses the brake pedal, compressed air from the primary air tank is directed to the rear drive axles, engaging the brakes. Simultaneously, the front steering axle receives compressed air from the secondary air tank to apply its brakes. Let's take a closer look at the air distribution diagram. The front axle brakes are activated by air pressure supplied from the secondary tank, while the rear axle brakes are engaged by air pressure delivered from the primary air tank. Air gauges on the driver's dashboard display the air pressure in both the primary and secondary air tanks, measured in PSI, pounds per square inch. How does air get into the primary and secondary tanks, and what manages the airflow? Several key components are involved in this process: the air compressor, air dryer, wet supply tank, primary and secondary air tanks, and the governor. Air compressor. Each semi-truck is equipped with an air compressor mounted on and powered by the truck's engine. The compressor is continuously driven, either by a belt or by gears, and functions in 2 main cycles: the loading cycle and the unloading cycle. During the loading cycle, the compressor draws in outside ambient air and forcefully pushes it into the system until enough air is stored in the tanks for normal operations. Air dryer. As air is compressed in the air compressor, it heats up. This hot compressed air is then directed through the air dryer before reaching the air tanks. The air dryer functions as a filter to remove moisture, oil, and other contaminants while cooling down the hot air. Many fleets replace the air dryer cartridge annually or every 100,000 miles, whichever comes first. If you notice excessive moisture or oil mixed with water in the system, it may be a sign that the air dryer's cartridge needs to be replaced. Wet tank, supply reservoir. Cleaned air from the air dryer enters the large wet supply air tank, which serves as an additional buffer, allowing any remaining moisture, oil, or contaminants to settle at the bottom. The collected moisture should be drained regularly, ideally after each work shift, using a drain valve. In cold or winter weather, failing to perform this simple procedure can lead to serious brake problems due to ice blocking the airlines. Then, the pre-cleaned, pre-dried air flows from the wet supply air tank to the primary and secondary air tanks. The primary and secondary tanks both receive and store compressed air, but their capacity is limited. Once both tanks are filled to around 120 to 140 psi, which is considered a full tank, the air loading cycle should stop. Each tank has its own air pressure gauge on the driver's dashboard, indicating the stored air level. The primary air gauge displays a P or R, signifying the primary tank or rear axle. The secondary air gauge displays an S or F, signifying the secondary tank or front axle. If, for example, the air compressor malfunctions and remains stuck in its loading cycle, continuing to pump air into the system, a special safety valve will open to release excess air and prevent the tank from exploding. This typically occurs when the air pressure in the tank approaches 150 psi, at which point you may hear an unusually loud sound, indicating that the safety valve has activated. Air governor. The primary purpose of air governor is to maintain the stable air pressure in air tanks within a safe and efficient operating range, typically between 120 and 140 pounds per square inch. The air governor must constantly monitor the pressure in the air tanks and regulate work cycles of the air compressor. When the air pressure in the tanks reaches its maximum level, typically between 120 and 140 psi, the governor cuts off the air compressor from supplying additional air, initiating the unloading cycle. When this cutoff occurs, you may hear a loud spitting sound, and the needle on the air gauge stops rising, indicating that the tanks are full. The compressor doesn't completely shut down. Instead, it continues to run in an idle mode. Once the tank pressure drops to a low level, typically around 100 psi, the governor cuts in and commands the air compressor to begin the loading cycle. The air compressor starts pumping and adding more air until both tanks are full again. This process repeats continuously. Trailer brakes. A typical trailer is coupled and secured to the truck using the trailer's kingpin and the truck's fifth wheel. Additionally, 2 air hose lines and 1 electrical line must be connected from the truck to the trailer to provide air and electrical power. A typical semi-trailer uses the same air brakes as the truck, but its brake system relies entirely on air supplied by the truck. Each trailer is equipped with its own small auxiliary air tank, typically with a capacity of 20 to 30 gallons of air. When the driver couples the trailer and connects the air hoses, both tanks simultaneously deliver compressed air through the red emergency line, commonly referred to as the red glad hand, to fill the trailer's auxiliary air reservoir. If the truck's primary air tank fails to supply air to the trailer, the secondary tank automatically takes over, ensuring the trailer's brakes continue to receive sufficient air pressure for safe operation. When the driver presses the service brake pedal, an air pressure signal is sent through the blue service glad hand line to the trailer's relay valve. This valve promptly releases air from the trailer's reservoir, engaging the service brakes. The relay valve detects how firmly the driver presses the service brake pedal. Based on the air pressure signal received through the blue service line, it adjusts the air pressure delivered to the trailer brakes. The harder the service brake pedal is pressed, the more air is applied, producing greater braking power.
Our team is here to guide you through every step, so please feel free to reach out with any questions that you may have. Drive safely, and welcome to the program.